Who the fuck do you... Hey, stop!
The film begins with a wide view of a vast desert filled with rocky mountains. The landscape is both harsh and beautiful, a perfect place for desert hunters. Soon after, a helicopter lands, carrying a man named Richard and his girlfriend, Jennifer. They are on their way to Richard's house, which stands alone in the middle of the desert. They plan to spend some time together before Richard's annual hunting trip with his friends. Before leaving, the pilot gives Richard some peyote as a welcome gift. A short while later, Richard goes inside the house and sees Jennifer, who is confident and alluring. Soon after, the two share an intense moment of passion in the bedroom. Later that day, Richard receives a phone call from a woman who reveals that the man already has a wife and children. The call goes smoothly, as Richard's wife believes he is simply heading to the desert for a hunting trip. The next morning, Jennifer, wearing only her underwear, goes to the kitchen to get some water. Suddenly, Jennifer is startled by the unexpected arrival of Richard's friends, who come a day earlier than planned for their hunting trip. Richard is clearly annoyed, as he had wanted to keep his relationship with Jennifer a secret. Since they are already there, he reluctantly allows his two friends, Stan and Dmitri, to stay. As they introduce themselves, Stan appears especially eager to meet Jen. When night comes, they relax by the pool, enjoying the beautiful view of the desert. Dmitri entertains himself with his binoculars and seems curious about the item the pilot gave to Richard. Richard explains that the item is a powerful hallucinogenic drug with intense effects when taken. He claims that even a small amount could knock out an entire football team. He also mentions that someone once took too much of it and, under its influence, cut off his own leg without feeling any pain. To prevent the drug from causing trouble among his friends, Richard tells Jennifer to keep it somewhere safe. However, Jennifer becomes curious about the drug after learning what it is. Instead of putting it away, she hides it inside her necklace. Later, she steps outside and performs a seductive dance to entertain the men. After a night of pleasure, Jennifer has turned herself into a showgirl, surrounded by men who are captivated by her. Among them, Stan is the most eager and becomes especially thrilled when Jennifer invites him to join her in a sensual dance. The next morning, after waking up, Jennifer is greeted by Stan, who takes her to breakfast. While Richard is away from home, Stan tries to take advantage of the situation to get closer to Jennifer. Unfortunately for him, she ignores his advances and goes back to her room without explanation. Despite her rejection, Stan refuses to give up and continues to pursue her in her room. Stan feels disappointed and wonders why Jennifer is avoiding him, especially since he thought she seemed interested in him the night before. Jennifer makes it clear that he is not her type, mainly because of his short height. Her words offend Stan deeply, and although he begins to resent her, his desire for her remains uncontrollable. Terrified and powerless, Jennifer can only submit to the man's assault. Soon after, Dmitri appears but says nothing, silently watching his friend's actions. Unwilling to intervene, he chooses to walk away instead. He turns on the television and raises the volume to drown out Jennifer's screams. After a few hours, Richard returns to the house and is puzzled to find his two friends unusually quiet. Stan tells him that there has been a small problem with Jen, but does not explain further. When Richard goes to check on her, Jen insists that he call the helicopter immediately because she wants to go home right away. Seeing his mistress crying non-stop, Richard seems to realize what has happened. He leaves the room and angrily scolds his friends for their behavior. When Jen wakes up, she repeatedly says she wants to go home. However, Richard tells her that his friends will come to apologize and that he has already given her a large amount of money to make her forget the incident. Jen can no longer control her emotions and threatens to tell Richard's wife about their affair if the helicopter doesn't come to pick her up. Richard becomes furious, and his reaction frightens Jen, making her run away from the place. When his two friends see her escaping, they join Richard in chasing after her. A few moments later, Jen's escape comes to an end when she reaches a cliff with no way out. Soon after, Richard and his friends arrive and corner her near the edge. Feeling regretful, Richard tries to apologize for what he has done. He then attempts to calm Jen by calling the pilot to take her home right away. Jen finally feels calm when she sees that her wish is being granted. But suddenly, Richard pushes her off the cliff, and she is impaled on a tree as she falls. Stan and Dmitri are shocked by what happens, unable to believe that Richard had the nerve to do such a thing. Richard explains that they will be in danger if they let Jen go, as their actions could lead to a 15-year prison sentence. He also fears that his affair in the desert might be exposed to his wife. After that, Richard and his friends return to the house to collect their hunting equipment. They plan to return later to erase all traces of the murder and continue their hunting trip as if nothing happened. The scene then shifts to Jen, who is still impaled and now being swarmed by ants. Surprisingly, she is still alive, likely because the tree branches missed her vital organs. Trapped on the shrub, Jen struggles to free herself and notices the lighter she always carries. Using all her strength, she manages to grab it and sets the dry shrub on fire. The burning causes the branches to break, allowing her to escape, even with one still pierced through her body. Meanwhile, Richard and his friends are heading to the spot to dispose of her body. Luckily, Jen hears the sound of their vehicle approaching, so she quickly moves away from that spot. The branch still stuck in her stomach makes it hard for her to move, but she manages to hide just in time. When the three men arrive and see that Jen is gone, they are shocked. They assume that she has either been rescued or managed to escape on her own. The three men decide to find a way down the cliff to check where Jen is. After hearing them leave, Jen uses the chance to move away from her spot. Because the path down the cliff is long, the men only reach the area when it is already dark. They begin to wonder how Jen could have vanished so easily. At the same time, they find traces of Jen's blood and quickly follow the trail. However, the trail eventually leads them to a lake, where it suddenly ends. The three men then decide to split up to search for Jen, but Stan secretly feels afraid and chooses to stay in the car, hoping she might return there. Meanwhile, despite losing a lot of blood, Jen continues to escape with the little strength she has left. From a distance, she hears the sound of a vehicle searching for her. In her panic, Dmitri arrives on his quad bike, but leaves after failing to spot her. Jen is actually hiding underwater, holding her breath to avoid being seen. When Jen reaches the shore, she notices Dmitri nearby. She sees this as a chance to act because Dmitri has left his rifle beside his vehicle. Caught off guard, Dmitri tries to stay calm as Jen appears ready to attack. However, she soon realizes that he has tricked her. The rifle he left behind is unloaded and placed far from him on purpose. Dmitri tells his friends about Jean, but decides to torture her first. Jen manages to grab the knife from his pocket and stabs him to death, leaving his body in the lake. She then takes his equipment and continues her escape. However, her vehicle soon runs out of fuel, forcing her to walk again with the branch still stuck in her stomach. Not far away, she finds a cave and decides to rest there. Her injuries are severe and difficult to treat, causing her great pain. When Jen notices the necklace she is wearing, she suddenly remembers the narcotics she hid earlier. She also recalls how dangerous those substances can be. Without thinking twice, Jen takes the drug immediately despite its terrible taste. She forces herself to swallow it because she desperately needs its effects. Soon after, she begins to feel strange sensations in her body that she cannot explain. The hallucinogenic effects of the drug begin to take hold, causing Jen to hear voices and experience intense hallucinations. In a semi-conscious state, she starts preparing emergency treatment for her wound. No longer able to feel pain, Jen finally carries out an action that would normally be extremely painful. The knife cuts through the skin on her abdomen, but she remains calm and shows no pain. After pulling the branch from her stomach, she heats a drink can and presses it against the wound to stop the bleeding. The next day, the scene shifts to Stan sleeping in the Jeep, while Richard is revealed to be the one who threw the dead animal after failing to find Jen and only managing to hunt a game. At this point, they still have no idea that Dmitri is already dead. After waking up, Stan walks to the lake to wash his face. Suddenly, he is startled when Dmitri's body floats to the surface. Unlike Richard, Stan tries to hold back his anger over the death of his best friend, believing that Jen is the one responsible. They have no choice but to throw their friend's body into the lake. Afterward, Richard angrily blames Stan for not accompanying Dmitri and just sitting in the car instead. The men then leave the area trying to figure out another way to find Jen. Meanwhile, Jen has recovered from her injuries and discovers the bird symbol from the beer can left on her stomach after her treatment. She then grabs her rifle and leaves the cave. It turns out to be just a nightmare caused by the effects of the drugs, making Jen relive bad dreams repeatedly. After fully regaining consciousness, she prepares to continue her journey. This time, she is no longer running away but seeking revenge. The once weak and helpless Jen has now become strong and fearless. Overwhelmed by emotions and holding a shotgun, she begins searching for Richard and Stan in the desert. Meanwhile, Richard and Stan find the quad bike that Jane had used and decide to split up to search the area. Richard leaves first, while Stan, still in pain from his injured nose, uses a mirror to check its condition. However, he doesn't realize that the reflection from his mirror reveals his location to Jen. Without wasting any time, Jen quickly follows his direction. Even though she is barefoot and injured, she keeps pursuing him through the desert. After driving for a while, Stan's vehicle begins to run out of fuel. Jen takes this chance to aim directly at him using a weapon with an 8x scope. Although she has no experience, she tries to target his vital areas. The shot hits Stan's shoulder, and she hears him scream in pain. When Jen stands up again, Stan has already disappeared. Jen follows the footsteps of the man who assaulted her by tracing the blood splattered on the ground. Meanwhile, the injured Stan puts on a sock to stop his bleeding. Jen eventually loses his trail when the bloodstains end at a spot where she only finds his shoe. Hiding nearby, Stan loads his weapon, preparing to shoot Jen from behind. However, he struggles to aim because of the gunshot wound in his shoulder. As a result, his shot misses and only grazes Jen's ear. Wounded but still conscious, Jen quickly runs away while Stan keeps firing at her. Using the light from a broken torch, she tries to stop Stan from chasing her. Fortunately, the glass shards injure Stan, leaving him struggling to remove them from his feet. After pulling the glass out, he can no longer run, so he returns to the car to continue chasing Jen. The deep wound on Stan's leg makes it hard for him to press the accelerator, but his anger drives him to ignore the pain. Jen finally kills the man who once assaulted her. Afterward, she hears Richard's voice on the walkie-talkie, which fuels her hatred even more. Meanwhile, Richard feels frustrated that he still cannot find her. Stan does not appear at the meeting place they had agreed on and does not respond to the walkie-talkie calls. Feeling exhausted and frustrated, Richard decides to return home. When he arrives, he looks tense and worried about everything that has happened. He begins to believe that Stan, who has not come back, was probably killed by Jen. He plans to leave the desert by contacting the helicopter pilot to pick him up. After that, he quickly cleans himself before getting ready to go. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise, which makes him check the source even though he is completely naked at that moment. He thinks Jen has come to the house to kill him, but he finds nothing unusual inside or outside. Suddenly, the sound of the TV startles him, and his fear of Jen's arrival becomes real. At this moment, Richard feels completely helpless as Jen aims her shotgun at him. Jen's bullet hits Richard in the stomach, and they start shooting at each other. Wounded and in pain, Richard forces himself to move away. Jen keeps chasing him, but as she approaches the room, She doesn't realize that Richard is already waiting inside, ready to shoot. Luckily, the trail of blood from Richard's wound gives away his location, so Jen decides to take a different route. Richard, growing weaker from blood loss, uses a food wrapper to cover the wound. Soon after, Jen finds him, and a chase begins between them. At one point, Jen slips on the blood that has spilled onto the floor. This situation gives Richard the chance to attack her easily, while Jen, already weak, can barely fight back. With no other choice, she strikes Richard's stomach wound. She then grabs the rifle and finishes him off with a final shot. In the end, the three men who abused and nearly killed Jen get what they deserve, and her revenge comes to an end. Covered in blood, she takes a few satisfied steps outside. Then she turns around after hearing the sound of an approaching helicopter.